new LinkedIn Hiring Pro can't undo your last hire, the no-show. Who set you back because they didn't show up on day one, or day two, or ever again. And now your product launch is delayed because you're talking to alien abduction podcasters to track them down. But LinkedIn Hiring Pro can help make sure your next hire sticks. In fact, businesses who use LinkedIn are 24% less likely to reopen a role in the next 12 months. Hire right the first time with LinkedIn Hiring Pro. Post a free job today at linkedin.com/quality.
You're listening to Unbound, off script. No outlines, no safety nets, just Beth Curry talking about whatever the hell she wants, or whatever the hell you've asked her to uncover. It's unfiltered, it's unpredictable, and it's officially started. Pull up a chair and don't expect her to stop talking anytime soon. She's a total blabbermouth. Take it away, Beth.
Hey everybody, welcome back to Unbound, off script. I'm Beth. Today I'm going to talk about something that I've actually had a few people ask me to talk about. Most of you probably know of the show The Price is Right. I know what you're thinking. Oh, you watched it as a kid. Sure, didn't we all? I mean, every sick day and every snow day in Canada was spent with Bob, right? Like, I remember watching with my grandma from an incredibly young age. I didn't just watch it, though, because over the last couple of decades, I've lived it multiple times across 2 countries, over 2 decades. And I'm here to kind of take you all through it because, you know, I get questions all the time. You know, it's an exhausting kind of experience, to be honest. You know, there's lineups, there's really bizarre logistics, but also like the pure adrenaline of just like being in that studio. And from the latest experience, yes, the pants. We'll get to the pants. So yeah, I'm gonna talk about it. I'm gonna go all the way back to the year and the legend and the 1 a.m. wake-up call back in 2005. Bob Barker was still the host at the time. He's been, at that time, hosting The Price is Right since 1972. And this was, I think, possibly his final season. We recorded it the season before, obviously, because the tape dates are always months out. And being the final season, we didn't know it at the time. But what we did know was that if you wanted to be in that studio audience, you were going to have to earn it. And earn it, I think we did. So what a lot of people don't know about going to a live game show taping, you will be awake before God himself, okay? So that particular Monday, our alarm went off at like 1 o'clock in the morning. Like, you know, this wasn't a slightly early morning. This was a pitch black. You know, the city wasn't asleep because it's Los Angeles, but whatever. 1 o'clock in the morning, we had to be at Studio 33, okay? CBS Television City at the Bob Barker studio by 3. So we were up by 1 because we had to be there for 3 in the morning, although the smart people knew to be there even earlier. Crazy, this process, back then especially. So if you've never been to LA, CBS Television City is this legendary complex on Fairfax Avenue, been home to some of the most iconic television productions in history, okay? And at 3 a.m., it's, you know, it has a pretty specific vibe, I would say, which is somewhere between, this is the most exciting thing I've ever done, and why am I like this, I guess. So we arrived, kind of bleary-eyed. We parked at the Grove, and then we walked over. That's my recollection. I don't know why we chose there. It was clean. It was bright. It was easy. I don't know. We were bleary-eyed, and we were kind of buzzing with this nervous energy. We immediately joined this line outside the gates. And I want you to picture this, okay? Like already dozens of people, all of us strangers, all of us a little unhinged for being awake at this hour, I guess, standing outside this wrought iron fence in the dark, united by this one singular plan, and that was getting called down to contestants row, you know? And there's kind of a strange camaraderie in that kind of a line, right? Like you're literally sharing snacks. Like we were eating untoasted Pop-Tarts and things like that, swapping stories, talking about growing up with Bob and speculating wildly about what games might be played, debating the best pricing strategies for a showcase showdown. We were getting tips from other people who'd already done this before. It was weird and wonderful and very, very, very American. After a while, the line kind of started filtering towards the building, right? Like we saw the sunrise and everything, of course. And we moved from the outer gates to a second holding area, which was a bit closer to the studio entrance. And then we waited some more. A lot of waiting. Okay. That's the secret no one tells you about the game show tapings. The actual waiting is the majority of the experience. Eventually, and this is where things get interesting, the producers came along in the line to interview us. This is a real thing that happens, and it's more important than most people realize, especially for this particular show. So the producers aren't just being friendly. They are literally casting the audience, okay? They're looking for energy and personality and someone who's going to make good television when their name gets called, right? They ask you quick questions, where are you from? Why are you here? What do you do? And you have about 30 seconds to be the most memorable and enthusiastic, charismatic version of yourself at what is maybe now 7:00 in the morning. You've been standing outside for several hours. It's basically a job interview, except the job is potentially screaming and running down the aisle on national television. After they get through everybody, we finally are taken into the studio. Now, of course, 20 plus years ago, my memory of the whole experience is a little foggy. I do have pictures, from way back then. I don't know. Again, Studios 33 at CBS Television City. It's a real studio. Like, it's a proper television institution. Okay. It's bigger than you'd expect from watching the show. The set kind of fills the space with the iconic blue and yellow color scheme and the pricing game stages, the big wheel, contestants row, those 4 podiums up front. Walking in kind of was surreal, right? Like, I remember we came in from the back as we were being seated, and I remember running my hand along the back wall, which was curtains at the time. So, it was pretty surreal, as a former kid fan who, still kind of was into this kind of stuff. I thought it was cool. And the energy in the room was electric, right? Everyone was exhausted, but it didn't matter because the moment you walk through those doors, the adrenaline just kind of takes over, right? We were all on it. So Bob Barker, as the host, he was a total professional. Okay. So he ran the taping, as I tell you this after the fact, like a well-oiled machine. Okay. There was no fussing around, no fucking around. There was no unnecessary delays, no ego-driven pauses for effect. There was no, it was very fascinating to watch. He came out, he did his thing, and everything just kept moving. And the taping itself was basically as long as the show, about 45 minutes because there were no commercials. They just kind of kept rolling, and the pacing was so tight and efficient that it felt like watching the show at home, just with you in the room. It was the closest any of us would ever get to the actual TV experience of The Price is Right. The format was exactly what you'd expect. There were 3 pricing games, and then the wheel spins for the first group, and then 3 more pricing games, and then the wheel again, and then the big showcase showdown thing with the 2 big prizes. Classic, iconic, perfect. Now, I do want to say, too, that we made friends with people in line, and one of them was Cynthia, and Cynthia did get called down, and I beat the shit out of her. That's actually on camera, sort of, when she's being called down, and I'm just pounding the crap out of her because I was so excited for her. You do get excited for the people you meet through the process, and you're super happy for them because even when you know that you got screwed because someone in your group's already been called down, it doesn't matter. You're so happy for them. And she won. She won everything up until the wheel. But anyway, Bob Barker, again, I got to go back to him. So he had that kind of rare quality of making everything feel natural while simultaneously being completely in control of the room, right? So he knew when to play the cameras and when to let a contestant's excitement kind of breathe and when to just keep it moving. And watching him work from just a few rows back was genuinely interesting, And of course, he reminded everyone to spay and neuter their pets, as, they do, because some things are simply eternal. We didn't know it then, but we had just witnessed one of his final seasons as the host of a show. I believe that our episode aired, I think we were the 2nd episode, maybe the 3rd episode of that particular season. It's on YouTube. I'm obviously considering for video subscribers sharing footage, but I need permissions and shit like that. So I don't know. This might just be a voice podcast. Don't know yet. But anyway, he had hosted the show for over 3 decades, and looking back now, I think it's kind of cool, that I finally got to see Bob in action in person before he left. And yeah, I don't know. I just, as a kid fan, thought it was pretty cool to be able to see that. I didn't really fully understand what that meant to me at the time, but I do now. So now, fast forward 20 years. Okay, so it's 2025. This was last October. I'm turning 50. And I decided, because apparently this is just who I am as a person, that the way to celebrate half a century on this earth was to go back to The Price is Right. We were going to go to Disney in Anaheim, but I have strong opinions about Disney these days, ranking slightly higher than any Holly Weird experience. So it was this. I just chose this. Now, here's the thing. In the years since our 2005 visit, the show had moved. So Bob Barker retired in 2007, and Drew Carey took over as host, and eventually the show relocated. I think it was after the pandemic. They had to make changes and stuff to continue the show during the pandemic. Really weird stuff. But then they moved from CBS Television City to a new studio in Glendale, California. New host, new home, new era. This time, when we went in October, we had priority access. So I want you to appreciate how meaningful this is, because it was very meaningful to me. Instead of waking up at 1 a.m, we got to sleep in a little and arrive at the studio at a comparatively luxurious 7 o'clock in the morning. I know. 7 a.m. on your birthday still isn't exactly sleeping in, but I got some shit done before we even left, because I don't know. I love getting up early, especially when I'm in California, and we were literally staying in an oceanfront home. So, I didn't ever want to go to sleep, to be honest. But 7 a.m. on your birthday, not sleeping in, compared to 2005, it felt like a damn spa day. Okay. So the priority line meant that we moved quicker. We didn't stand for hours outside a gate in the dark. We were processed efficiently, and then things got interesting. So here's what changed in 20 years. The whole thing has kind of been, professionalized into a genuine fan experience. It's not just stand in a line and wait to get into a studio. It's like a whole ass thing. Okay, so after checking in, we were ushered under large tents set up on, grass outside the studio, shaded, relatively comfortable. This actually wasn't in the studio. This is in a church that's on the same grounds as where they, film the show. So we were in this church, or outside of this church. It was it was comfortable. It never rains. It really doesn't ever really rain in LA. Like you're almost always guaranteed to have a clear sky and sun, and it's lovely. So, most of the process was outside. And then we filtered back down under more tents where we sat at tables with computers and filmed out forms inside waivers and gave up our personal tax information and all that kind of stuff in case we were winners. Just all the logistical paperwork that comes with being part of a TV production, right? Just standard stuff, but done in a way that felt organized and thought through. And then we moved into another line where we picked up our name tags, and it was all smooth and fast. Because, you wear the name tag. You've seen the name tag. You know what the name tag looks like. And that name tag is basically your ticket. And from there, we were taken into kind of a holding room. And it was appropriately sized for the size of the group. But this room was filled with props from the show, a great big, huge, giant, oversized versions of pricing game items like big check and stuff like that. And there were set pieces, that kind of thing. You could take photos with all of it. There was comfortable seating. There was water and snacks provided. Music was playing. They were showing episodes of The Price is Right on screens around the room. The warm-up people, the producers, all of them were in the room kind of hyping us up, great energy. They were, in other words, getting us hyped, and it worked. Before we got into the studio, we were separated into groups of about 15 people and taken into a separate room for the producer interviews. Same concept as 2005. It was quick and energetic and designed to identify the people who are going to make great TV, but more formalized and more structured. I guess 20 years of refinement will do that. Something that genuinely surprised me about the Glendale studio, it's smaller than the Bob Barker studio, not dramatically so, but noticeably. And the audience was a lot smaller too. So for a show that kind of feels so big and expansive on TV, the space itself is much more intimate in person. the taping itself was also very different from what we experienced in 2005. So rather than flowing through all 6 pricing games and then the wheel spins and all of that in kind of what seemed like one continuous flawless shoot, they broke it up. Okay. So they filmed the 6 pricing games, and then they did the 2 wheel spinning segments back to back at the end, and then the showcase showdown. And all of it, I guess, just gets assembled in editing to look exactly like this seamless broadcast, right? Little like finding out your favorite magic trick has a very logical explanation. It, doesn't make it less impressive. It's just differently impressive. So some interesting things that happened since that show has already aired. It aired in January of this year. I can talk about it. Another way that it was different was like it was very hard to hear Drew. It was almost like he was mic'd up to a separate thing. Like we couldn't really hear him, and we couldn't hear prize descriptions and stuff. There was just other noise that we would hear. And so, it was we could sometimes hear stuff. And Drew actually hung out with us during the commercial breaks. And, he talked to all of us and whatever. Like that was different from Bob too, because Bob didn't do that. So there was that, like the inability to kind of hear stuff. Also, there were a lot of retakes on stuff. And one of the most uncomfortable ones was the very first woman to get called down. She got called down. She did her big production that we are actually, believe it or not, instructed to do. So these people who are acting the fool are not normally like that. Okay. They've been told literally to do that. So, she, did the whole dance and whatever to get down to the front. And then they're like, wait. And then they realized that for whatever reason, there was like a technical error or whatever. They had to redo that. And like, so now she already knows she's going to get called down. So the second take isn't really as good as the first, right? So that was kind of strange to me. Anyway, back to Drew. Like I said, he's warm and he's genuinely funny, and Bob was polished precision, but Drew kind of brought this easy, affable energy that makes the whole room kind of feel like a big ass party, right? He's clearly someone who enjoys being there, which makes the audience enjoy being there as well, right? Different from Bob, but wonderful in his own way. And celebrating my 50th birthday in that room, kind of surrounded by that energy and the Drew shout outs. It was pretty fun. Okay. I'm going to do a quick detour here, because at some point, we're not going to dwell on this. We were in Las Vegas. I think it was 2011, 2012, maybe. I don't recall which time. And we did The Price is Right live. Actually, I think it was 2011. That's kind of the touring stage version of the show that runs in various venues. It was fine. Look, I'll be charitable. It exists. It was incredibly cheesy. And honestly, if you ever find yourself having the opportunity to do this, I don't know. If you've never been to the actual show, maybe it would be fun. People seem to enjoy themselves. But if you've been to the actual show, after the real thing twice, it's a bit like ordering a gourmet burger and just getting like the fast food version. It scratches a similar itch, but you know what you're actually eating. So I'm just going to leave it at that and move on. So very, very recently, this is the most recent chapter for me. And I say this with all the love in the world because we had a genuinely wonderful time. The Canadian Price is Right experience was, I don't know. It was something else entirely. Okay. The show is hosted by Howie Mandel, which is already a good time. I've known of Howie since I was a preteen, thanks to my dad. The man is a Canadian comedy legend, and he brings a completely different energy than either Bob or Drew. I mean, the man is 71 years old, right? We were attending specifically the Howie birthday episode. We did not know this until we entered the studio, and they were coming at us with party hats and signs and things like this. And Howie did not know this until he came out, and we yelled surprise and whatever. So the whole thing was themed around celebrating Howie Mandel, complete with the signs and the party hats and just that kind of festive chaos that comes with commemorating someone's birthday on big TV. I can't tell you too much about the specific episode details because it hasn't aired, but yeah, it's going to air on his birthday, obviously. So end of November. Now, here's where I have to be honest with you. The Canadian production, and again, this is with love, did not appear to have fully figured out its crowd management sitch. Okay. So it's not filmed. It's aired on City TV. It's not filmed at City. CBC is where it's filmed, and they are the only studio anywhere in that area that can actually accommodate vehicles and things like that, like huge things for filming. Kyle, the audience guy, actually told us this. So we first got there and we walked through security and stuff, and we checked in by scanning these QR codes, which is fine and modern and very 2026. We briefly met audience coordinators. We were interviewed by producers in the lobby area. It's kind of the same concept as the American tapings, though the space for it was a little more, shall we say, fluid. And then we were divided into 3 separate lines, and we stood there for a long time. Like a long time. Like they had to finish interviewing everybody first, and they couldn't start moving any of the 3 lines for some reason until everybody in the background was finished being interviewed. So that was weird to me. Efficiency, not a thing, apparently. And then came the elevators. So the studio was on the 10th floor, which is a perfectly reasonable place to put a television studio, I guess. The issue is that the elevators have a finite capacity, obviously. And when you have a large studio audience all trying to get to the 10th floor in batches of however many people fit in an elevator, the math kind of starts working against you. Okay, so we had to go through this other security section first with everybody else once all the interviews were done. We waited for elevator after elevator, shuffling forward a few people at a time, kind of a slow motion conga line towards the sky. Once we got to the floor, the team lead, which was in my case was me, I was the leader of our team, had to pick up our name tags in what can only be described as a somewhat cramped and congested staging area. And then we waited more, and it was very, very hot and noisy and overwhelming. And I don't know, like there were a few times I had to pull myself off to the side just to like breathe and get away from nonsense. And people were kind of rude. Very strange Canadian experience when you compare it to the American experience, you know. Honestly, I find Americans to be a lot friendlier and respectful towards me than my fellow Canadians, and I'm not really sure why. Like, I'm just me on both sides of the border, so I don't think it's me, but I don't know. Maybe it is. Anyway, anyone like the standing around without a lot of direction feeling was palpable. Like everyone involved was doing their best, but was perhaps working some things out in real time. I don't know. Very strange. So the studio itself was a whole different animal as well. You know, it was nothing like either of the American ones. It was smaller and more functional feeling, less of the classic game show grandeur that you'd associate with the CBS version. This one was interesting because we walked in and we were still allowed to use and have our phones. So I was able to get some footage of that part of the experience. And it was kind of all like the podiums and the stage were on like the same flat level, like on the same floor. Whereas in the American one, the podiums are down on audience level, which is obviously angled up towards the back. And then you have to go up steps, or in the new studio, a little bit of a ramp to get up onto the stage, which was more elevated. So, you know, some people in the audience probably didn't have a really good view of things that were going on because it was all kind of on one strange level. Now, the format is completely different, which I genuinely, I knew it going in, but I had to see it to actually believe it. So in the Canadian version, you play the pricing games, but the progression to the showcase works differently. So the top 4 winners from the pricing games get to do a wheel spin. And then the top 2 from that advance to the showcase. So your odds of getting selected are already different from the American version, and the whole structure has like an entirely different rhythm to it. Because they didn't call like the first 4 and then play a bunch more games. Like only 4 people, like they called up less people, right? Because they only played 4 pricing games as opposed to 6. So whatever. It was still fun. The pricing games are pricing games, whatever. Doesn't quite have the same television you grew up with feeling though. I do want to talk about the unsung hero of the Canadian taping experience, the audience hype guy. His name's Kyle Miller. Wow. Really good at what he does. While we waited between segments, and we waited a fair amount, this dude walked through the crowd like an absolute professional. He worked the crowd. He was genuinely funny. He was engaging. He had the whole studio laughing and cheering, and he gave away a lot of prizes to audience members participating in the in-between segment games and activities. That's another thing. The American one does not give audience members prizes or anything like that. So I don't know if that was just because it was Howie's birthday episode or what, but that's what happened. Anyway, Kyle was, without exaggeration, one of the highlights of the whole experience. The man knew what he was doing. Now, I want to talk about the pants because some people on some of my social media accounts have heard things about the pants. So my husband, as it happens, was wearing a pair of pants from a brand called Man-Made. I'm sure many of you have heard of Man-Made. He wore them that day, just a regular clothing choice. He wanted to be comfortable, right? He did not plan this. He had no agenda. He simply put on his pants the morning of and came to a game show taping. As it turned out, the Howie birthday episode had Man-Made as part of the show. They were one of the one bid prizes, right? They had a package on there. And Anthony, one of the owners or creators or founders, there's the word I'm looking for, of Man-Made. He was sitting right in front of us in the audience. So when the show was doing its Man-Made segment, Anthony got up and stood in the aisle and just ripped his pants right off in front of my husband. Howie dropped trow as well because he's wearing the unders, and Kyle, the audience hype guy, it was brought to his attention by many, many people that my husband was wearing Man-Made pants, and he proceeded to make a whole thing of it. That part isn't on TV, but Howie dropping his pants and Anthony ripping his off do. But anyway, made a whole thing of Brian wearing the exact right pants in the exact right place at the exact right time. And so Brian won some audience giveaway thing from Manscaped just because of his entirely unplanned brand loyalty. Can't make it up. Genuinely can't. Every audience member also got a pair of boxers from Man-Made. And I'm not being sponsored here, but I want to fuss about them because I'm telling you, I have even worn these and they are damn comfortable, okay? Many men I know love the pants and the boxer briefs. One special guy who isn't my husband, but almost was. Who knows? Anyway, he loves the way that they feel on his balls. That's what he says. He wears them when he's working the farm and he wears them when he's running an ED. So men listeners, you have to check them out, okay? Anyway, kind of thing that only happens when you go to The Price is Right. So, what do you take away from 2 decades and 3 tapings in 2 countries and one Vegas detour and a very fortuitous pair of pants? A few things. The logistics are always worth it, whether you're up at 1 a.m. outside a wrought iron fence in 2005 or navigating a 10th floor elevator situation in Toronto in 2026. The moment you walk into the studio and the music starts and the lights come up, it's worth it every single time. Just the experience alone. There's nothing quite like being live in the room when a game show happens. The energy is infectious in a way that television can't really fully capture. The show itself has changed, and that's okay, because times change. Bob Barker's version had a particular kind of precision and formality to it. It was still fun, but, there was just kind of a different vibe. But Drew Carey's version is warmer and looser. The Canadian version is its own beast entirely. Each of them is a product of its host, its era, its production. None of them are wrong. They're just kind of different flavors of the same essential joy, right? Now, production quality matters more than you realize when you're in it as well. So the American ones, particularly the Glendale studio experience, had clearly spent years refining the audience journey. The Canadian one kind of feels, even though they're in season 2, and this was season 2 we were at, it's still kind of finding its footing, I think. I don't know. Maybe they've settled on this. If they have, I don't know. I know I'm not going back to this one. Anyway, it doesn't mean it wasn't fun, but the contrast was notable. Something else is sometimes the best moments are the unplanned ones, not the games and not the pricing challenges and not the wheel, but a husband wearing the right pants on the right day and winning, $300 for no reason, except the universe decided to have a laugh. I don't know. And finally, if you ever get the chance to go on to a Price is Right taping, any version, any era, do it. Get up early, stand in line, talk to the producers, meet people, talk to people, especially in the United States. Very, very kind, happy, fun people. And you meet people from all over the United States. You might even meet people from Canada in the United States because you know what? People do still go there. Anyway, wear your best, be enthusiastic, be genuine, be yourself because you never know. You might be the next one that they call. to come on down.
And that brings us to the end of another episode of Unbound Off Script. Someone eventually had to pull the plug because, as you know, Beth will happily keep talking until the sun goes down. Thanks for listening, and we will see you whenever she finally runs out of things to say. I'm Rob, she's a blabbermouth, and we're out.